So a fan messaged me and was like, make a video about Injustice, which was my first band. And I was like, all right, I'll make a video on that next. So basically, for those of you that don't know, before I was NECRO, I was in a thrash band called Injustice. And I had a yellow BC Rich Warlock guitar. And yeah, I was pretty dope on it. It was mainly rhythm. I knew how to play rhythm. I still do till this day. I was never really good at lead because it takes a lot of practice to become good at lead. And but I was real good at rhythm, very much similar to Max from Sepultura. When it comes to writing riffs and shit, I'm good at that. And yeah, I was living in the project still. I was always into hip hop, but like I knew how to rhyme when I was like 9, but I first became a metalhead first, even while living in the projects, because the projects, I grew up in Glenwood Projects, 5714 Farragut Road, Apartment 2C in Brooklyn. We had a lot of metalheads in the projects. The projects was like half black, half white, and a lot of the white kids listened to metal. And yeah, it was a weird upbringing, you know. We had a channel called U68. It was like even before Video Music Box. And on U68, they would play a cross between like a Run-DMC joint, and they would go into a Motorhead joint, then go into a Beastie Boys joint, then go into an Anthrax joint, and they would play metal and hip hop back to back. And I kind of think that's how I got into both genres, because that channel, you know, and I was really young, so very impressionable. U68, they used to have a host called Emo Phillips. The guy was jokes, hilarious. And so, you know, in the projects would have a lot of thugs on the benches outside. I lived on the second floor, so if I just put my head out the window, there'd be dudes playing The Message outside on the bench. So I was influenced by hip hop, but also by, you know, metal. So I remember my uncle, rest in peace, Hanan, not Uncle Howie, he's my other uncle, my father's brother. He gave me an Ovation guitar, very young, probably when I was like 11. And I just liked playing it and shit. I would, you know, play different things, classical or, you know, metal stuff, and I started excelling, you know, and I could do galloping, dun da 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 da, and I had to learn how to do that first. That's one of those things that when you're learning guitar, you know, it's like getting a black belt, you know. Well, you get different belts, but you know, for rhythm, when you can do dun da 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 da, then you can mix it with different riffs, you know, da 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 dun da da da, and you know, so it wasn't easy. I remember learning how to. It's called triplets, you know. It was something, you know, to learn and to do it technical the way that James Hetfield would do it with Metallica was crazy. Because if you listen to the Metallica albums, James Hetfield is legendary for the way that he incorporates triplets and like all different kind of like muted E chord riffing with different riffs and shit. And yeah, man, Metallica to me was legendary for that, because I think they're the kings of that, you know. Slayer, were more, not as much triplets technical, but more on did that type of shit. Megadeth were very technical on triplets as well. So, yeah, man, you know, from a rhythm perspective, you know, they were very ill. And so I learned that probably, you know, by 12. I got really good. And I remember Injustice was first my brother with Mike Nabatov. I know Jorge from Marauder was in the group at one time. And Al Tifarelli, he was on drums. And I wasn't in the group yet, and because I was really young, you know, I was like 12, and I used to get treated like shit, you know, like you're young, you know, and just being treated like a little kid. And I had to earn my respect, and by becoming really dope on the guitar, they let me in the group because I was writing dope riffs and shit, and I got that good that Bill had to let me in the group, you know, because they needed a guitar player, and I was really fresh. So, but you know, there would always be that little mix of like, you could get kicked out real quick, you know, because you're the younger brother, like, fuck you, you know? So it was always that kind of bullshit. Which I think contributed to me being Necro and doing my own thing later on as a hip-hop artist, because I don't like to be controlled and told what to do and shit. So the first Injustice demo doesn't include me on it, but I'm on the second demo. That's the one that got produced by Josh Silver from TYPO-NEGATIVE. We went to his studio. He had a studio at the time. It was pretty dope, and it's probably the first professional studio I've been in. And you know, we recorded all the stuff there. And you know, back then, I guess in metal production's not like in hip hop. You know, you know, Josh didn't write any riffs or anything like that. He helped engineer the session, and then I guess mix the sound of the demo. And you could hear these songs online at you know, on YouTube. The demo is called Inhuman Conditions, and the first song's called Necrosphere, and another song is Ascend to Obscurity. And what's the other song called? I forgot. But they're pretty dope, you know what I mean? We try to get a deal. You know, we definitely shopped it a lot. This was probably like around 89, 88. And I remember Roadrunner. We really wanted to get signed to Roadrunner because Roadrunner had Sepultura, if I'm correct, Beneath the Remains. They had Obituary, Slowly We Rot. And that was like the pinnacle label for us. I remember the guy who ran it, and I think his name's Monty Connor. And we got a rejection letter from him on our you know, pretty dope demo that was produced by Josh Silver. And he just rejected us. And I remember we got really turned off by that. And that's what kind of led us to go into hip hop, because we were like, shit, man, you know, we're getting rejected, and we're not really competing with Sepultura and Obituary. Maybe we should do hip hop, because back then, like in 1990, 89, there wasn't really any white boys, you know. You had maybe like 3, you know, that were popping. Beastie Boys, I guess Third Base, around the time when we were doing metal. They came out. 89 was Cactus album, so we thought we could do something different, you know, and especially with our influences coming from metal, we were able to incorporate a lot of flavor, and coming from the projects, you know. So yeah, that's what kind of led to me doing the first demo I did, called Check Out the Demo. Check Out the Demo. It was me and Bill, called we called the group The New Minority. I guess, you know, white kids were the minority. So that was Bill came up with the name. And yeah, man, so Injustice, we couldn't get a deal. We got rejected by Roadrunner, and we kind of gave up from there. But I remember we, I used to go to L'Amour's a lot. L'Amour's was the rock capital of Brooklyn. It was a club in Bensonhurst, and everybody played there. Metallica, Slayer, like, that's where you had to go if you came to New York. If you wasn't playing, like, the Ritz in Manhattan, like a Manhattan club, you were coming to Brooklyn, and you were going to L'Amour's. L'Amour's was probably more respected than even the Manhattan clubs. L'Amour's was that spot. And, yeah, I used to get in there, being so young and shit. It was crazy. It was like being a young little kid, with adults everywhere. It was very trippy. And I remember one of the first shows I went to at L'Amour's was Death, and I was in the front row. And I didn't really like it being in the front row because I was being pushed and, squashed, and I was like, this ain't for me. But I really enjoyed the show. It was incredible. Rick Ross was in the group, and he was playing with and Chuck Schuldiner as the lead singer, and I remember a lot of red lights, very evil. And but yeah, I guess I was just meant to be on the stage, and not as somebody in the crowd. I knew that in my head. But I remember Dan Lilka used to always be around. You could see him because he's so tall and his hair, and he would always be walking around every show and very approachable. And they would play like, metal songs before the bands would come on. I remember Slayer used to when they would put on like Rain and Blood during people would go fucking nuts. And I remember all the Latino metalheads loved Slayer because the lead singer, Tom Araya, if I'm correct, he's Chilean. So if you were like a Latino fan, you went fucking crazy for Slayer. There would be like groups of, South American metalheads. They always had the short hair. You would see a South American metalhead they wouldn't even have long hair. It would be like a short hair, like ball head, but they would all be wearing Slayer shirts. And yeah, man, it was a different culture, very original, very rebellious, and we used to get shows and shit. I remember as Injustice, we opened for Sepultura and Obituary, which was crazy. I'm like 12 years old, 11, and opening up for Obituary and Sepultura. I remember I was just focused on not fucking up my riffs, just on stage, and I couldn't even, it was much different than being a solo rapper, on stage, controlling the mic, as me as the main rapper. I was the guitarist in a band, Bill was the main singer, so I didn't even talk to the crowd. I was just a guitar player. But very nerve-wracking being that young, not wanting to fuck up. And I remember I did my thing on that Sepultura show. I don't think I fucked up much, it went well. I also remember we played this S&M club, and my mother was concerned that I was going to an S&M club, and Bill was like, I'll watch out for him. And Bill was like 16, so he was young. It was called Zone DK. Weird name. And it was like a club that bands would play, and it had S&M going on. And they were real young. And yeah, man, it was crazy. I remember at one point, Bill's girlfriend broke up with him to get with me. Some girl named Wendy. It was like she would come to the rehearsals, and she was Bill's girlfriend first, and it didn't work out, and she ended up getting with me, and I was like 12. I barely knew what to do with a girl at that point, And I hadn't even lost my virginity probably. I think I lost my virginity like 14. And I was getting groupies even then at like 12. It's fucking bizarre. I remember the girl picked me up at like, where'd she pick me up? From fucking junior high school. And all the kids were like, who's this motherfucker? Got a bitch picking him up? But, yeah. Injustice was a trip, man, you know? But I was very young, so I didn't really have a lot of control. I got to write riffs and all that, but it was still that, yo, you're the little brother, you know? I could kick you out anytime. That kind of energy. And, yeah, I didn't really like that, you know, but, you know, I wanted to be around older people because older people seem cooler, you know, and they did cooler things. And one time we opened up for Napalm Death at this club, I forgot the name, Cabaret. We opened up for Napalm Death, opened up for a band called Ludacris at L'Amour's. I'm pretty sure we opened up for Biohazard as well at L'Amour's. And I did a show opening up for Obituary in New Jersey. And Trevor Perez, he wore the Injustice shirt I gave him. I was like a little kid. I went up to him and gave him an Injustice shirt. And he was mad cool. And he wore the Injustice shirt on stage. So that was flavor. But, yeah, man, I just want to make a little video talking about this to give y'all something, you know, a brand new video. I know y'all waiting for certain things, but I got to be in the mood to make those videos, you know. At the right time, it'll happen. I got a whole list of videos to make, and don't mind the voice. I just had a tooth pulled, so not really, you know, in a super talkative mode, but, you know, I like to strike when the iron's hot, and I knew I had to make this video real quick. So, yeah, man, if you got any questions, you know, I can really elaborate on a lot of this shit even more, but let's leave it at that. Salute. Go to necrosuperstore.com. Check out all my other videos on here, and respect.